After we've gathered here today, Havreem, after a little break which we've had, and it's a break that I had to take to settle a couple of things. Nevertheless, we're going to go back to studying parts of Kasidut, specifically parts of the Tanya, and comparing and putting it in a perspective of New Testament theology. The last time we gathered for Darkhei Talmudim, we studied a little on the concept, on the midot of Rechem, mercy. And we seen why mercy uh, is not fixed within the seven midot of the Sfirot. All the seven midot of the Sfirot have got to do with the emotive side of the soul. Whereas the midot of Rechem is a hybrid between the emotive as well as the cognitive. So last time we seen that to show mercy, it's not only an emotive side, but it's also a decision that one takes to offer or to show mercy to somebody. Now, based on mercy, we're going to go a little ahead, and in this session today, we're going to understand, or we're going to try to understand basically, how the formation and the structure of the human soul, we will try our best to mentally get a grasp on that, and how it can attract tuma, impurities, how it wears garments that we cannot see with the eye, and how evil would cleave to the human soul and its rectification. So, the topic is a little vast. We're going to try our best to understand. Now, if you all have your Bibles, please turn with me to the book of Hebrews, and we're going to read a couple of verses from there, because the book of Hebrews gives you a very fascinating insight about the role, or rather, it tries to make us understand the depth of the role of Yeshua in what he has done for all of humanity. So it's trying its best to give us, a very deep understanding of it. So in Hebrews 2:17, it says this. So you have to understand this in context, because when it talks about Yeshua in a very human way, it's portraying a very human side of Yeshua, because it is actually dealing with the middot. So do not think for 1 second that it's actually pertaining to Yeshua being, only a human emanation from God, as well as a divine emanation, but it's talking about the middot of the essence, the soul, the essence of who Yeshua actually is. So it says in 2:17, it says, for this reason, he had to be made like them. And who's it talking about? It's talking about the children of Abraham. Because if you look at the verses a little above 17, it's talking about the children of Israel. And it says it's for this reason, for their weakness and for their inability to overcome, or to come into their perfection. This is the reason why he had to be made like them, like the children of Israel. In other words, he had to be made human-like. He had to appear human-like, he had to be formed human-like, fully human in every way, in order that he might become a merciful, remember we studied Rachem last time, a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, and that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. So we're going to put all of this into perspective. Okay. Now, in Hebrews 4:12 it says also, for the word of God is alive and active, sharper than any double-edged sword. It penetrates even to the dividing soul and spirit, joints and marrow. It judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart. Nothing in all creation is hidden from God's sight. Everything is uncovered, laid bare before the eyes of Him to whom we must give account. Therefore, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold firmly in the faith we profess, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way just as we are, yet he did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we might receive Rahem, mercy, and find Chen, grace, to help us in our time of need. Now, putting all this into perspective, as I said, if we look at the Middot, now specifically when it's talking about Yeshua in the book of Hebrews, we have to understand it's paralleling, it's taking exactly the processes that were happening in the Beit HaMikdash and putting that into perspective of what Yeshua has actually done. What has he accomplished? And what were the processes that were happening in the Beit HaMikdash? Now we know in the Beit HaMikdash they had the korbanot and the sacrifices and the sprinkling of blood and all those things. So those korbanot correspond one to another, the animal soul to the animal soul. Whereas the difference of what Yeshua has done has got to do specifically with the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur. And let me elaborate more on this. We tend to look at Passover as atoning because we've been, it's related to the time and to the process of Passover. But Passover is pure grace, whereas the death and resurrection of Yeshua has got to do with mercy and it's got to do with redemption. So we have three aspects. We have grace, we have mercy, and we have redemption. Now, let me quote what the Rebbe says. He differentiates between following positive commandments and negative commandments. The positive commandments are essential that one naturally follow, and one that naturally should not violate or break. If one violates and breaks positive commandments, in simple terms, it is the to-do list. So there's a list of things I need to do, right? Instead of making a list, it should be an innate nature that a person, this is what a person does. It's a natural order of things. it's the to-do list, it's the positive things that need to be done. Whereas the negative things are an aberration, something that we must be cognitively aware of that I should not break. So if there's any list that you need to put up saying do not do, it is the negative mitzvot. Now I want you to understand as a fundamental aspect of the soul, if you want to categorize or you want to quantify the essence of what is a soul, what is it made up of? What is exactly is the soul and its nature, its creative aspect of what the soul is composed of? To put it in very simple words, the soul is conscious intelligence. It is living, continuous, present tense, conscious intelligence. And this conscious intelligence has many layers to it. And each layer is a consciousness that is either on a higher level or at a very lower level. And each layer of this consciousness now can has the potential of being pure when you come close by way of Qurban, approach Kerev, when you approach the throne of grace, as we read. Therefore, let us boldly come to the throne of grace, and as we come to the throne of grace, each layer of conscious intelligence of the soul gets purified automatically because you are approaching perfection. Why do I say it's conscious intelligence? Because the very root and the source of the soul is pure intelligence, and that intelligence is alive, it's conscious, it's sentient. If you understand the meaning and the word, what it means to be sentient. Sentience simply means to be self-aware. So the self-awareness stems from that, says that I am alive and I am an intelligent being. I'm thinking, walking, processing, calculating, going, and this is my awareness, it's my consciousness. So different grades of consciousness in the soul at different levels have these properties of being clothed in different types of consciousness. Ignorance, uneducation, a soul that is full of anxiety, a soul that's not calm, a soul that's constantly using its source to produce evil thoughts, evil actions. All this comes from the point of intelligence. And intelligence is the foundation of being. So if there is no intelligence, there is no existence. The consciousness.
मैं 1 night गया था, you just get used to it and next time मैं वहीं जाता था.
Yeah, we stayed 2 nights, no?
No, 1 night. No.
Hello?
को लगता.
Can someone mute, please? So, intelligence, without intelligence, there is no existence. Without consciousness, there is no self-awareness. So there is existence because of intelligence, and there is consciousness that tells me that I am sentient, I'm aware, and I live, and therefore I'm a rational, intelligent being, which is connected to different compositions of the soul. And that is why it's necessary to understand that the soul is composed, or in fact the structure of the soul stems from the the innermost portion of a human being that produces the existence and the ability to live. I'm alive, and this is my will. What you call Ratson in Hebrew, Rats. And that which is intelligent and living is constantly moving, it's running. From where you get the word Rats, to run. So if you define, now we have defined basic composition of the soul. Every thought, every motive, every desire, every expectation, everything that a soul is emitting, producing within it, it's blooming and it's covering itself in these garments. Sometimes these garments are good, sometimes these garments are obscure, sometimes these garments are downright evil. An evil thought will give you, just think, that you are able to convert this process into different colors for whatever reason and put it on a screen, and you can map it out. So each thought will give you a different color, each negative thought will give you a dark, eerie color, a good thought will give you a bright color. And just think, picture in your mind what's happening at every given point of time in your soul. And you can also look at this at a human being. So if you're sitting down with a human being for 1 hour and having a conversation, and every conversation that leads in different directions, you can notice the change in the person. Sometimes the person, gets pensive. Sometimes he feels, oh man, not my expectation. Or he feels, you've said something wrong, so he sulks. Different things, and whatever's happening inside, it's shown on the visage very faintly. But if you're able to read a person's mannerisms, read a person's the way he behaves, talks, portrays himself, you will realize that the inner processes of a person are actually these things that he's emitting, and it's also showing faintly on the physicality. So every violation of a positive commandment has its set of rectification. Every violation of a negative commandment has its set of rectification. So here the Rebbe writes, this, it says, by violating a prohibition, evil cleaves to the soul. So when we're talking about the soul specifically out here, we're talking about the nefesh, the animal soul. So it's like saying, suddenly I get this really bad thought, and I'm feeding that thought, right? I'm feeding that thought, and when I'm feeding that thought, a zuhama, a poison, starts infiltrating different parts of my body. I think science would call it, toxic blood. Just to make you all understand, what is high oxygenated blood and what is toxic blood. When the blood is really toxic, it affects all parts of the body, right? Certain parts of the body die, cells become, they don't get that kind of nutrition. And so different parts of the body start getting affected because the blood is not being cleaned, purified, and toxic. So it is the same that every thought, every action, and every deed that we do brings out these toxicity, and this toxicity is like garbing and putting on garments that you cannot see, but the world is watching you because the world says, man, isn't this person angry today? Isn't this person upset? Isn't this person very nervous today? Isn't this person looking sad today? Isn't this person in a very negative space? Don't go next to this person. A whole lot of things. Whole lot of things. And we're constantly operating in these things. If you can find a human being in a positive space 24 hours of the day, which I doubt you can find. I mean, it's not going to be possible. But if you do find, you would understand the difference between how we operate and how we are intended by God to operate. So it says that when we violate a prohibition, what do you mean by violate a prohibition? That means we feed into the negativity of our soul. At the source, the root, we allow that negativity to come to the surface. We draw it out like water. We feed it. Evil cleaves to his soul and it impairs its root and origin. What is the root and the origin? I told you, the root and the origin is basic intelligence of living and will, consciousness. Now this is very important to understand what Yeshua has done, because we're going to come to that a little later. So each of these sphirot get affected, and they get affected, and they get affected, and if it's not rectified by discipline and self-awareness and zehirut and zerizut, it also shows in a person's face, in his visage, in the way he carries himself, mannerisms, and the last stage of that effect is what you would call in biblical terms, sarat. Or in the book of Leviticus, it's translated as leprosy, but it's not really leprosy. Sarat is the result of all the zuhamma that's been accumulated, this bad blood, toxicity in all these different garments that we are wearing, and it shows finally. And over a period of time, as age catches on, it's true that not only biologically we tend to get toxic, and therefore we have, medical problems and these problems and a whole lot of other problems happen to and the eyes get weak and the knees get full of pain and arthritis and a whole lot of things happen, right? And this is all because of the toxicity of the soul. Can a human being avoid this on his own? No. Why? Because when the initial toxicity set in the Garden of Eden, it embedded itself in the root and the origin of the human being. So therefore now there are two things we have to look at. The outermost garments that are being affected, and evil Zohama is being cleaving on to the outer garments, okay, and dulling the effect of the soul. Whereas the inner root and the origin of the soul is also getting impaired, wherein that was what God said and told Adam and Chava in the Garden of Eden, that the day you eat of this fruit you will die. So it's the root and the origin that gets corrupted and the person finally dies. Whereas the garments that a person wears, that is something that portrays in our lifetime by way of how we conduct ourselves, and I explain to you. Now let's get back to see what Yeshua has actually done. And we connect all this Zohama and this impurities and all put together. Okay. Therefore it says, therefore there is no atonement for his own soul or higher until Yom Kippur, as it is written, he will atone for the holy place, for the impurities of Israel and for their sins. And it goes down right towards the end and it says, before God you will be purified. Leviticus chapter 16, this whole chapter is about this. Leviticus 16:16. The holy place refers to atonement for the impure who enter the sanctuary. Okay. Now, think about Beth Hamikdash. Think about what would have happened 2000 years ago, even before that. Now we have a son and daughter of Israel who, in his composition of his soul, is not wearing the right garments, like what Yeshua tells me. It says in the marriage supper of the Lamb, uh, the guests are invited in and everybody's ready and dressed for the wedding, except for one person who does not have the right garments, who does not have the right composition of the soul, because the soul is impaired and evil and Zohama is cleaving onto that soul. So he says, you're not louder. You got the wrong wedding garments on, so please leave. He's pushed out. And what has Yeshua done now basically? He has taken the animal soul and he's brought it into its perfection. Because in the Beth HaMikdash, when they offered the animal soul, the animal blood, that carries the animal soul. And that animal soul, that blood, it cleansed the soul and the outer cleaving of all the impurities of the soul, but it never dealt with the inner origin and the source of the soul. That still remained unrectified. So the inner man remained unrectified, the outer man was constantly being cleansed by the blood of bulls and animals, and God says, okay, I can do this right now, until the time when even that made no meaning, and then God himself says, enough, stop it, because you all don't know what you are doing. Right? Even the sacrifices that you all are doing now is not atoning for you. And the word atonement, kapar, kippur, from where we get Yom Kippur, simply means to polish, to scrub and polish. So you're not scrubbing and polishing the root and the source of your soul through the blood. What are you doing? You're cleaning. It's like taking the garments, your clothes, and giving it for dry cleaning. And the agent of the cleaning is the blood. It dry cleans the garments that you are wearing in your existence. Every minute you're changing a garment. From morning you're angry, afternoon you're happy, evening you're sad, in the night, you're in a frivolous mood and you're wearing all these garments throughout the day. That's what it does. So to manage the animalistic behavior of the children of Israel, God told Moses to explain and to tell them to bring in the animal sacrifices. So the animal blood was only atoning and cleaning for the outer garments, which were getting impure again, because the inner man, the root and the source, still carried the sting of death from Gan Eden. So if they cleansed themselves in the morning with the blood of the animals, the next day they were back to square one, because the root and the source was giving them the chance to sin all over again. And this is what Rav Shaul says. He says it was impossible for the blood of goats and these animals to permanently give a solution to this. Not possible. Now the human soul is on a much bigger, finer and more qualitative level than the animal soul. So obviously a human being has a different level of soul quality than a sheep or a goat or a bull or a buffalo. And there is no way any of these animals and their animalistic blood can deal with the root and the source. It can only deal with the garments and cleansing of the garments, the outer man. To solve this problem, and many people don't understand this. To solve this inner and outer problem, we read that verse in Hebrews 2:12. It is for this reason he had to be made like them, like the children of Israel, or like humanity, fully human in every way, in order that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in service to God, that he might make atonement for the sins of the people. Now this makes so much more sense. Why? Because the quality of the human soul is far greater than the quality of the animal soul, of any bull, goat, sheep, whatever. So the blood of Yeshua, being blood of a human and of a high quality of blood that the world has never seen, it atones for us in a way that it takes and it cleanses the impurities on all the garments that we are wearing constantly in our lifetime. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. Every garment that we have worn, a garment that we are wearing constantly, should be covered by the blood of the Lamb, should be covered by the blood of Yeshua. Because the blood has that effect of cleansing. It's the cleansing agent. But it's not the blood of animals, of sheep and goats and cows. This is the equivalent human to human, not animal to human. So therefore, this quality of the blood of Yeshua is incomparable to anything else. And that cleansing is far greater than you and me can ever think. Therefore, it is very, very necessary in our existence. And likewise, we've always attested to this fact that whatever you do, wherever, whatever this thing, it has to be covered by the blood of Yeshua. But I want you to go further in this. I want you to understand the dynamics of the covering of the blood. The covering of the blood of Yeshua means that every garment that I wear in the spiritual realm, it has to be affected in cleansing and atoning, because the sense of kapar simply means scrubbing and polishing. The word kapar means to scrub and to polish. And once the soul is scrubbed and polished, it shines at a level a little higher than the normal other human beings. So you have the rest of humanity that's darkened, full of dark patches, impurities, everything. And then you have the one who's been polished and who's been atoned for, and that level is called klipa noga. Noga means light, effervescent light, resplendent light. That's noga. So now the soul, once it is cleansed with the blood of Yeshua, it's emitting a resplendent light in the spiritual realm, because that cleansing is happening. There's no impurity. And we must constantly be in that state of purity. Now comes the more important aspect of what Yeshua has done. We've understood about the blood and the cleanser, that atonement. But the more important thing that Yeshua has done is that the root and the source, the inner man, the pinimiyut, the kiziniyut is the atonement, the pinimiyut is a long drawn out process that's got to do with the rectification of the image and likeness of God that you are created in, and which is corrupted because of the sin of Garden of Eden, and which sitting there inside of you, in your root and in your source, is the thing called death. And this death now is 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 wanting you, is requiring you to sin and to transgress. And each time that aspect, that root, that inner thing inside of you is lusting and is wanting you to commit sin, you are attracting sin and evil cleaving back to your soul all over again. But the question is that if I am cleansed by the blood of Yeshua, or I am being cleansed by the blood of Yeshua, or should I be cleansed all the time by the blood of Yeshua? That is something that each soul has to understand. Can we claim and say, okay, I have been cleansed with the blood of Yeshua and that's it, I'm done for. I don't need anything else. Or is it a daily process, a working process that yes, every minute, every time, every action, morning, evening and night, I engage myself with prayer, with good things, with good thoughts. So I minimize the effect of this zuhama and this tuma in my soul, and therefore whatever little I am generating of that evil that's cleaving to me, I ask the Lord to cleanse me. It's a continuous cleansing, or is it a one-time cleansing, done and dusted, which I don't think so. So therefore, being in the process, morning, noon and night is very essential for the soul. Now, the inner man is where Yeshua sits down, okay, and says, okay, now let's start the process of rectifying the image and likeness that you are created in. Because once that rectification starts, then a soul learns to choose good and not evil. It starts rectifying the thought patterns. It starts rectifying the needs, the desires that are negative, not required, and it starts choosing life rather than the impurities. That is why in Hebrews it says again, 4:14, therefore since we have a great high priest who has ascended unto heaven, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses. Understand what this is saying. It's not what you think it is saying. It's telling you that the root and the origin of Yeshua is from a very, very high level of thought and existence in the Father. You and me don't come from that source. Therefore, he was made like us, like the children of Israel, it says, to go through this process and not let the process overcome it. Because truly Yeshua, his root and his source, was completely unimpaired. He did not have that inside pinimiyut that has been corrupted like you and me. That's why he says in the New Testament, somewhere in the Gospels he says, for the prince, Luke 19 in fact, for the prince of this world now comes and he has nothing inside of me. He has no investment inside of me. He has no part inside of me. There is no tuma inside of me. The very root and source that I come from does not belong to this world. It does not belong to this world. Now this verse makes sense because it says, therefore, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet did not sin, because he who was pure and who knew not sin, did not sin. And he is able to allow us to share into that root and that source of who he is and change us from the inner man. So once the inner man starts this process of tikkun and rectification and change from inside, the outer man itself starts getting less and less and less of impurity. Once the root and the source is connected through Yeshua, then true change reflects on the outside. And this is what this verse means. Then verse 16 says, let us therefore approach God's throne of grace with confidence, with bitachon, so that we may receive rachem, mercy, and find chen, grace, to help us in a time of need. To help us in a time of need. What is our need? A time of need is when we know and we realize that yes, there is this portion deep within inside of me that needs this change. And once we step over on the other side from inside, we will know that intelligent consciousness is complete inside of us. So for a matter of fact, that's what it means that he who overcomes will I give to eat from the tree of life, and he will live forever. Why? Because the inner man, that root and the source, has been rectified. In normal terms, a person is born again, a person has changed, he's whatever. These are all colloquial terms, but I want you to think very deeply, what does it mean to be rectified? What does it mean to be born again? What does it mean to say that my root and my source of my existence itself is changed? I've been completely transplanted. Therefore, whatever I'm saying and doing, whatever garments I'm wearing, now is not what I was doing 5 years ago. Am I the same person? And if you are still the same person, and if I am still the same person than I was 5 years ago, then that is a problem. If you're going to a congregation and the people are the same for the last 10 and 15 years, that is the problem. If you are in a community where there is only animalistic behavior, no matter how good the worship is, no matter how good the church is, no matter how good and fantastic everything's in the church, if there's only animalistic behavior, there is a serious problem there, friends. Serious problem. We cannot afford to allow the animalistic nature to take precedence and be unrectified. We just can't take that gamble. It's not the right thing to do. So the concept of being dressed spiritually originates from the root of the nefesh. Because the nefesh, the root of the nefesh, the source, comes from the blood, and the seat of the nefesh is in the heart, that's pumping the blood, and the seat of the nefesh, okay, the origin of it, the source of it, is from the earth. Your blood is chemicalized by nature. It's iron, it's water, it's magnesium, it's calcium, it's a whole lot of things involved in it. It all comes from the elements of the earth. And the elements of the earth that compose of your blood, that's pumping and vivifying your animal soul, your nefesh, in its true essence will not know God. It cannot know God. It has to be transplanted. It has to be rectified. It has to be metamorphosized completely into the divine nature. Therefore, you and me have to be introduced to that divine nature. We don't have that divine nature inside of us. If we don't have that divine nature inside of us, how are we going to be rectified? It's a simple thing. Each level of the soul, every garment, from the inner to the outer level of the garment, draped one over the other, finally gives the soul a metaphysical existence and further gets clothed into a gross organic body differentiating between all three, namely the body, soul, and the vivifying spirit, each formed and synthesized with the withholding power of God's word. Every erroneous and rebellious thought creates an evil existence or a poison zoma that cleaves to the nefesh and blunts the consciousness of the Ruach HaKodesh. Blunts the consciousness of this. These patches of evil are called Tuma, impurity, which is dealt with in Sefer Vaikra that we are studying. The level of Asya is the level of free will, the level that we live in, the existence on this plane. The level of free will and choice for the soul, therefore giving the soul its ability to choose either good or evil. These patches have to be cleared. Now in Yom Kippur, if you look very carefully, the concept of Yom Kippur is you have two goats. One goat that's sent, one goat that remains. The goat that sends atones for the outer, but the goat that remains, La Adonai, atones for the inner. It rectifies the inner. And what happens with that blood of these goats, with the goat with the inner, not the outer, the inner? It is said, if you read Leviticus 16, that the high priest would go in and he would take the blood of the goat, not his own blood, because it's not the root and the source of Yeshua. He would go in and he would sprinkle that 7 times. Once on the east side and 7 times in front of the mercy seat. And why 7 times? Corresponding to the 7 levels of the Sphirot. 7 times. So Sphirot of Gevurah, purified. Sphirot of Chesed, purified. Sphirot of Chod, purified. Netzach, purified. Tiferet, purified. Yisod, purified. Malchut, purified. And therefore, all Israel would be purified on that day. But what happens the next day? is the inner man rectified. Now, many people, even during Jesus' time, they never realized what Jesus was trying to do. He didn't come for the outer man specifically. He came to change the inner man. He came to rectify the inner man. And once you conquer and you break the inner man and you rectify the inner man, everything else follows suit going forward. Absolutely amazing. And this is where the concept of Yeshua comes in. Being also an essentially human and pure in source, is able to deal with the human rectification on two levels. His blood that polishes and cleans the various levels and garments and thus removes the tuma, and so the soul reaches a level of klipa noga, a middle level or a resplendent soul, in comparison to the other souls in the world that are dulled with impurities, which exist on a more lower level of impurity. All Jewish souls, and specifically those that are rectified and polished in Yeshua through his pure inner source and outer cleansing with the blood, the inner man and the outer man. The outer man gets cleansed with the blood, while the inner man gets rectified from the stain of death that was put in Gan Eden due to the rebellion of Adam and Chava, because they thought in their heart to rebel and to disobey. So when we're looking at the Day of Atonement, we have to look at it very differently. We have to bring this into perspective. Because the animal soul does not have the ability to clean the inner root and the source. The animal soul could only be used to clean and to polish the garments of the soul, but yet not bring it to the level of Klipa Nuka, or what the blood of Yeshua can do. Yeshua being human with a pure source can rectify the human soul from within the source as it corresponds accordingly. Therefore, the process is 100% guarantee, complete and permanent, compared to only the cleansing effect of the animal soul. In fact, in the prophets, I think it's in Jeremiah also, God says, He says, enough, put a stop to all your sacrifices and offerings. I don't want it. God desired the old world before Yeshua that they would be able to rectify themselves, and He commanded and He wanted a very high level of rectification from them. They were not able to do it. Friends, they were not able to do it. But the stain of death was there inside of them. So it's like a two-pronged thing. Now, we have to sit and think, and we have to sit and reflect within us. What is the level of soul that I am operating in? What is the level of my tuma? What is the level of my rectification? Am I reaching the level of Klipa Noga or am I not? It's very important. Out of million souls, if there's one person who has achieved Klipa Noga, it's a very sad thing. It is given for all of us to reach the level of Klipa Noga until the perfection comes in the end. So all of us have been called to be atoned and walk in Klipa Noga, or resplendent soul, by also in a parallel way, to be rectified by the inner man. So we maintain that balance and maintain that purity inner and outer. We've been given that ability by Yeshua to do this. If we are not even aware of this, and if we're not doing this, then it's a travesty. It's something that we need to really study. We need to internalize, and allow God to accomplish this in our life. So I'm going to leave you all with this thought today, friends, that when we talk about Yeshiva, we talk about cleansing, blood of Christ, all these things, know for a fact that if I'm not walking in this level of what God wants me, and then there is something seriously wrong with my walk with God. So deeply reflect on what we studied, understand the mechanisms and the processes involved in all of this, and hopefully we'll be able, all of us, to bring ourselves to this perfection. So till we meet next, friends, next Wednesday, uh, internalize all that we study. Ask yourselves hard questions. Put yourself to the test. And bring it out and say, Lord, where am I on the scale of perfection? Where am I? Where am I on the scale of Klipa Noka? Am I hitting that? Yes or no? So work on it, friends. Work on it. And okay, so I'll leave you all with this until we meet on Friday again. Let's meet on Friday and Saturday morning. We'll restart all our things all over again. I'm going to put the recording off and talk a few